The sound of a city is a heartbeat made of glass and steel. For Margo, it was the only rhythm that made sense. Precision, clean lines, the smell of expensive perfume and the silent hum of an electric engine. She sat in the back of her car, her eyes fixed on a digital screen, mapping out the dimensions of a lobby that was supposed to be her masterpiece. It needed something raw, something authentic, as the board members put it. But to Margo, authentic was just another word for uncontrolled. The GPS led her away from the skyscrapers, down a road where the pavement turned to gravel, and the gravel turned to dust. The car stopped in front of a structure that looked like it was held together by prayer and ivy, a pottery studio, the Iron Root. Margo stepped out, her heels clicking uselessly on the uneven ground. The air here smelled different. It smelled of rain before it falls, of wet minerals, and something ancient. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, and the bell above it gave a dull, rusted clank. Inside, the light was golden and thick with floating dust motes. And there she was. Lola didn't look up. She was hunched over a spinning wheel, her back a map of moving muscles under a stained tank top. Her hair was a chaotic blonde mullet, bleached by the sun and dusted with gray powder. Her hands were submerged in a swirl of wet, gray sludge. The sound was hypnotic. The wet slap of clay, the low whir of the motor, the rhythmic breathing of a woman who looked like she had been carved out of the very earth she was kneeling on. "I'm looking for the owner," Margo said, her voice cutting through the stillness like a paper cut. The wheel slowed. Lola let the clay collapse. A deliberate, graceful ruin. She wiped a streak of gray across her forehead, leaving a smudge that looked like war paint. When she turned, her honey-colored eyes didn't flicker with the usual awe Margo was used to. They were narrow, calculating, and dangerously warm. "You're late," Lola said. Her voice was a low rasp, like sandpaper on silk. "And you're dressed like you're afraid of the world." Margo bristled, pulling her silk blazer tighter. "I am Margo Vance. I sent you the blueprints for the hotel commission. Minimalist vessels, 30 inches high, bone white, no texture." Lola stood up. She was taller than Margo expected, leaning against a wooden pillar with a casual, predatory grace. She looked at Margo's pristine, manicured hands. "Blueprints for clay? That's not how this works, designer. You don't tell the earth what to be. You ask it. And right now, looking at those drawings you sent, the earth is saying no. I am paying for a service, not a philosophy lesson," Margo snapped. Lola stepped closer. The smell of wet earth and cedar wood suddenly overwhelmed Margo's expensive scent. Lola reached out, her fingers still slick with wet clay, and stopped just inches from Margo's white lapel. Margo froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You want perfection," Lola whispered. "Perfection is a lie. It's what people use to hide the fact that they're empty. If you want my work in your lobby, you're going to have to learn what it feels like to actually break something." Lola gestured to the stool at the wheel. "Sit down. Take off the jacket. If you want those vases, you're making the first one yourself. Or you can leave and find someone who uses a 3D printer. Your choice." The silence in the studio stretched, taut as a wire. Margo looked at the mud. She looked at her silk. Then, she looked into Lola's defiant, golden eyes. The city felt a million miles away. Slowly, Margo unbuttoned her blazer. "Don't expect me to enjoy this," Margo whispered, her voice trembling with a cocktail of rage and an unfamiliar, terrifying spark of adrenaline. Lola smirked, a slow, devastating curve of her lips. "Oh, honey, by the time we're done, you're going to hate how much you love it." Margo sat. The stool was cold. The wheel was a silent beast waiting to be fed. She reached out, her trembling fingers hovering over the gray mass. "Touch it," Lola commanded, stepping behind her. Margot's fingertips met the wet clay. It was cold. It was heavy. It felt like a living thing, sliding under her skin. And then, she felt it. Lola's chest pressed against her back. Lola's arms, warm and solid, reached around her. Her large, clay-slicked hands covering Margot's own. "Don't fight it," Lola breathed into her ear, her breath hot against Margot's neck. "Close your eyes. Stop thinking about the lines. Feel the center. If you don't find the center, the whole thing flies apart. Just like you." Margot's eyes fluttered shut. The world became the heat of Lola's body, the spinning of the wheel, and the slick, chaotic friction of the mud between their joined palms. For the first time in 10 years, Margo Vance couldn't see the exit. She was trapped in the gravity of the earth. The wheel was a relentless, spinning void, and for Margo, it represented everything she spent her life suppressing. Chaos, fluidity, the lack of a steady, predictable edge. Every time she tried to tighten her grip, the clay wobbled, threatening to fly off the bat in a spray of gray sludge. She was used to glass and steel, materials that stayed where she put them. But this was different. This was alive. "You're holding your breath again." Lola's voice drifted over her shoulder, a low vibration that Margo felt more in her spine than in her ears. "I'm trying to stabilize it," Margo gritted out. Her teeth clenched so hard her jaw ached. Her knuckles were white, buried beneath the wet coating of the earth. "It won't stay straight. The centrifugal force is..." "Forget the physics, Margo. You're trying to dominate it. You're treating the clay like a subordinate." Lola's laughter was short and dry. "It's not a contractor. It's a partner. If you don't give a little, it'll just break your spirit." Suddenly, the weight behind Margo shifted. Lola moved from standing to sitting, straddling the bench behind her. The contact was electric. Margo felt the solid heat of Lola's thighs against her own, the rough texture of Lola's work trousers rubbing against her silk slacks. It was an invasion of space that should have made Margo recoil, but instead, it felt like a tether. Lola's hands, massive and caked in drying silt, slid over Margo's forearms. She didn't just touch. She pressed, her thumbs digging into the soft undersides of Margo's wrists, forcing them down. "Lower your elbows. Lock them against your hips," Lola commanded. "Use your skeleton, not your muscles. Let your bones be the anchor." Margo did as she was told, her body operating on a strange, primal instinct she didn't know she possessed. As she locked her elbows into her hip bones, the clay suddenly centered. The wobbling stopped. The gray mass became a perfect spinning cylinder under their joined palms. The silence in the studio deepened, punctuated only by the rhythmic shloop-shloop of the wet mud. The air was thick with the scent of ozone from the motor and the heavy, sweet musk of the damp floor. Margo's heart was no longer racing with anxiety. It was beating in a slow, heavy syncopation with the woman sitting behind her. "There," Lola whispered. Her face was so close that a stray strand of her blonde mullet tickled Margo's temple. "Now find the opening. Poke a hole. Go deep." Margo hesitated. "I'll ruin the base." "It's already ruined if you're too afraid to start. Go on." Margo pressed her thumb into the center of the spinning mound. The sensation was visceral, a sudden wet heat as her digits sank into the heart of the clay. It felt intimate, almost invasive. She felt the walls of the vessel beginning to form around her thumb, the pressure of the spinning earth pushing back against her. "Good," Lola murmured. Her hands shifted, her fingers interlacing with Margo's, guiding her to pull the walls upward. "Now, pull. Slowly. Don't rush the growth. If you pull too fast, the walls get thin, and the whole thing collapses under its own weight, just like a secret you can't keep anymore." Margo felt a lump in her throat. She thought about her office, the glass walls, the cold coffee, the endless spreadsheets where everything had a place and a price. She realized she had been pulling too fast for years. She had been thinning out her own walls until she was almost transparent. As the vase rose between their hands, a strange, dizzying intimacy took hold. Their fingers were a tangled mess of skin and mud, indistinguishable from one another. Margot's head leaned back, just a fraction, finding the hollow of Lola's shoulder. She could hear Lola's heartbeat now, steady, fierce, and unhurried. "Why are you doing this?" Margo whispered, her eyes still squeezed shut. "You could have just taken the money. You could have just made the vases and sent the invoice." Lola didn't answer immediately. She squeezed Margot's hands, forcing the clay into a graceful flare at the top. "Because I saw your face in that magazine article last month. The Woman of Steel. You looked like a ghost, Margo. You looked like someone who had forgotten that the world is made of things you can actually touch. I didn't want your money. I wanted to see if there was still blood in your veins." Margo opened her eyes. The sun had begun to set, casting long orange fingers of light across the studio. The clay on her arms had started to dry into a pale, chalky mask. She looked down at their hands. They were beautiful, the contrast of her pale, slender fingers against Lola's scarred, powerful ones, all bound together by the gray earth. "There is," Margo said, her voice barely a breath. "I know," Lola replied. Lola reached out with one hand, leaving Margo to hold the spinning vase alone for a second. She picked up a sponge, dripping with cool water, and squeezed it over their joined hands. The water washed away the thickest layers of mud, revealing the reddened skin beneath. Then, Lola's hand moved. It didn't go back to the clay. It traveled upward, tracing the line of Margot's jaw. Her thumb, still gritty with silt, brushed against Margot's lower lip, pulling it down just a fraction. Margot's breath hitched. The wheel continued to spin, the vase now forgotten, wobbling as Margot's focus shattered. "You have a smudge," Lola said, her eyes darkening to the color of burnt sugar. "Where?" "Everywhere." Lola leaned in. The distance between them vanished until they were breathing the same air. Margo could see the individual flecks of gold in Lola's iris, the tiny scar on her lip, the intensity of a woman who lived entirely in the present. The tension was a physical weight, heavier than the clay, pulling them together with the force of an incoming tide. Lola's hand slid to the back of Margot's neck, her fingers tangling in the silk, smooth black hair of Margot's bun. She pulled, not hard, but with a terrifyingly clear intent. Margo met her halfway, her hands, still covered in wet gray mud, reaching up to grab Lola's shoulders, leaving dark, messy prints on the blonde woman's tank top. The vase on the wheel gave a final, wet groan and collapsed into a shapeless heap, but neither of them noticed. "If you want to ruin me, Margo," Lola whispered against her lips, echoing the very words Margo had once feared, "don't do it with a blueprint. Do it with your hands." The collapse of the vase was a wet, heavy thud that anchored them back to the reality of the dimly lit studio, but the physical connection remained unbroken. Margot's hands were still clamped onto Lola's shoulders, her expensive silk sleeves ruined, soaked through with the gray water of the slurry. She should have cared. She should have been calculating the cost of the dry cleaning or the lost time. Instead, all she could feel was the frantic pulse in her own fingertips and the steady, grounding heat of Lola's skin. Lola didn't pull away. She stayed in Margot's space, her hand still threaded through the dark, elegant strands of Margot's hair. The air between them was thick, charged with the scent of ozone and the metallic tang of the clay. "You ruined it," Margo whispered, though there was no accusation in her voice. It was a realization. The perfect vessel she had spent the last hour trying to manifest was now a slumped, unrecognizable mass of mud. "I didn't ruin it," Lola countered, her voice dropping to a low, resonant hum. I freed it. It was trying to be something it wasn't, because you were forcing it. Now, it's just clay again. It's a beginning, Margo, not an end. Lola pulled her hand back, but only to reach down and switch off the motor of the pottery wheel. The sudden silence was deafening. The low whir that had provided a safety net for their conversation was gone, leaving only the sound of the wind rattling the glass panes of the studio and the synchronized rhythm of their breathing. "Look at yourself," Lola said, gesturing to Margo's reflection in a darkened window pane. Margo turned her head. She saw a stranger. Her hair was falling out of its precision bun in messy, ink-black streaks. Her face was smeared with gray silt. Her white blouse, once a symbol of her untouchable status, was stained and clinging to her skin. She looked broken. She looked chaotic. She looked, for the first time in years, completely alive. "I look like a mess," Margo said, a small, hysterical laugh bubbling up in her throat. "You look like you finally touched something real." Lola stepped off the bench, offering a hand to help Margo up. Margo took it. Their palms slid together, the drying clay acting like a gritty adhesive. As Margo stood, her legs felt heavy, unmoored from the rigid discipline she usually forced upon her body. She stumbled slightly, and Lola caught her, pulling her flush against her chest. The contrast was staggering. Lola's rough, utilitarian workwear against the ruined luxury of Margo's silk. "The commission," Margo started, her voice shaking as she tried to regain some semblance of her professional identity. "The hotel. They expect a report. They expect progress." Lola leaned back against the heavy wooden workbench, pulling Margo with her into the shadows, where the golden sunlight had faded into a bruised, twilight purple. "Forget the hotel. Forget the boardrooms. They don't want art, Margo. They want wallpaper. They want something to fill the silence so they don't have to listen to their own hearts beating. Is that what you want to be? Just another piece of furniture in a lobby?" Margo looked up at her. The intensity in Lola's eyes was terrifying. It wasn't just desire. It was a demand for truth. Lola was stripping away the blueprints, the titles, and the armor, leaving Margo with nothing but the raw, unrefined material of her soul. "I don't know who I am without the blueprints," Margo admitted, the confession tearing out of her chest like a jagged shard of glass. "I've spent 15 years building a fortress. If I let you in, if I let this, whatever this is, happen, the walls will come down, and I don't know what's underneath." Lola's expression softened, the hard edges of her defiance melting into a devastatingly tender curiosity. She reached out with both hands, cupping Margo's face. Her thumbs traced the line of Margo's cheekbones, wiping away the drying mud with a slow, deliberate reverence. "Then let them fall," Lola whispered. "Fortresses are just fancy cages, Margo. I'm not interested in the walls. I'm interested in the woman who's been screaming behind them." Lola leaned down, her forehead resting against Margo's. The intimacy was suffocating in its beauty. Margo felt the world narrowing down to this single point, this dusty, mud-stained corner of a studio on the edge of nowhere. The logic of the city, the demands of her career, the expectations of her family, it all felt like a dream she was finally waking up from. "I'm scared," Margo whispered into the space between their lips. "Good," Lola murmured, her grip on Margo's face tightening just a fraction. "Fear means you're close to the center. Don't run from it. Use it. Turn it into something." Lola shifted her weight, pinning Margo gently against the workbench. The wood was cold and hard against her back, a sharp contrast to the heat of Lola's body pressing into her. Margo's hands moved instinctively, her fingers digging into the muscles of Lola's arms, seeking an anchor in the storm. Outside, the first fat drops of a summer rain began to pelt the tin roof of the studio, the sound echoing like 1,000 tiny hammers. The smell of wet dust, petrichor, flooded the room, sharp and intoxicating. "Show me," Margo breathed, her eyes searching Lola's. "Show me what's at the center." Lola didn't hesitate. She didn't offer words. Instead, she reached for a small, sharp wooden tool on the bench. A stylus used for carving intricate patterns into leather-hard clay. She took Margo's hand, turning it over so the palm faced upward. With the gentlest touch, she traced a line across Margo's skin. It didn't cut. It just left a mark in the thin layer of silt. "This is you," Lola said, tracing a jagged, erratic path. "And this," she drew a circle around the center of Margo's palm, "is what you're afraid of. The place where you stop being a blueprint and start being a person." She dropped the tool, the wooden clatter echoing in the room. Then, she replaced the tool with her lips. She kissed Margo's palm, right in the center of the circle, a soft, lingering contact that sent a jolt of pure, unadulterated electricity straight to Margo's heart. Margo gasped, her head falling back as the last of her defenses shattered. She wasn't an architect anymore. She wasn't a CEO. She was just a woman, standing in the rain, covered in the earth, finally allowing herself to be seen. Lola moved her kisses upward, tracing the inside of Margo's wrist, the crook of her elbow, the sensitive skin of her shoulder where the silk had slipped. Every touch was a claim. Every kiss was a gold-filled crack in Margo's porcelain exterior. "You're not a glitch, Margo," Lola whispered against her neck, her voice thick with a hunger that matched Margo's own. "You're the masterpiece. You just needed someone brave enough to break the mold." Margo reached up, her hands finally finding Lola's face, pulling her down. This time, there was no hesitation. This time, Margo was the one who closed the distance. Their lips met with the force of a long-overdue collision, a kiss that tasted of salt, rain, and the bitter sweetness of a truth that could no longer be denied. The kiss was a revelation of gravity. It wasn't the polite, measured affection Margo had known in her world of galas and glass offices. It was a desperate, grounding collision. It tasted of the storm outside and the ancient mineral dust of the studio. As Margo's fingers tangled in the rough, sun-bleached strands of Lola's hair, she felt the last pillars of her curated identity collapse. The woman of steel was melting, surrendered to the heat of a woman who smelled of cedarwood and raw earth. Lola pulled back just an inch, her breath hitching, her forehead still pressed against Margo's. Her golden eyes were dark, searching Margo's face as if reading the map of a newly discovered continent. "You're shaking," Lola whispered, her thumbs smoothing the damp, dark hair away from Margo's forehead. "I feel like I'm falling," Margo admitted, her voice fractured and thin. "I've spent my whole life calculating the load-bearing capacity of every wall I built. I didn't plan for this. I didn't account for you." Lola smiled, a soft, tired expression that reached her eyes. "That's the thing about the earth, Margo. It doesn't care about your plans. It just waits for you to realize you belong to it." Lola stepped back slightly, but didn't let go of Margo's hands. She led her over to a large, heavy table in the center of the room. On it sat a row of finished pieces, bowls and vases that had been broken and then painstakingly put back together. But they weren't hidden. The cracks weren't camouflaged with invisible glue. Instead, they were traced with bold, shimmering veins of real gold. "Kintsugi," Margo whispered, her professional eye recognizing the technique, though her heart felt it differently now. "The art of precious scars," Lola said, picking up a small bowl. "When something breaks, most people want to throw it away or pretend it never happened. They want to hide the damage, but in Kintsugi, we believe that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. The gold doesn't just fix the crack, it honors it. It says, 'This happened, and I am stronger because of it.'" Lola set the bowl down and turned to Margo, her gaze intense. "Your life Margo. Your perfect career, your sterile lobby, your blueprints. It's all just a vase that hasn't been broken yet. You've been so afraid of the first crack that you've never actually lived. But tonight you broke, and I want to be the one who pours the gold into the seams. Margo looked down at her hands, mud-stained, trembling, and raw. For the first time, she didn't feel the urge to wash them. She felt the weight of the moment, the terrifying beauty of being unfinished. I don't know if I can go back, she said softly, to the meetings, to the silence, to the woman who was afraid of a smudge of dirt. You don't have to go back to being her, Lola said, stepping close again, her presence a warm, solid wall. You can be the woman who builds something real, not just a lobby, but a life, with texture, with flaws, with me. The rain on the tin roof had slowed to a rhythmic, soothing patter. The air in the studio was cool now, but the space between them was electric. Margo reached out, her fingers tracing the gold vein on the bowl Lola had just held, then moved her hand to trace the line of Lola's jaw. The commission, Margo said, a playful spark finally lighting up her blue eyes. The board will be furious if I bring them vases with golden cracks. They want minimalist and bone white. Lola laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the shadows of the workshop. Then let them be furious. Let them see what happens when you stop following the blueprints and start following the fire. Or better yet, tell them the woman of steel retired tonight, and the woman of gold took her place. Margo leaned in, capturing Lola's lips in a slow, lingering kiss that felt like a promise. It was the taste of a new beginning. She realized that her life hadn't been ruined by the mud or the collapse of her pride. It had been refined. The sterile machine of her existence had finally developed a glitch, a beautiful, human, golden glitch. Teach me, Margo whispered against Lola's skin. Teach me how to stay centered when the world starts to spin. Lola wrapped her arms around Margo's waist, pulling her flush against her, the height difference making Margo lean up just a fraction. The center isn't a place, Margo. It's a feeling. It's right here. Lola pressed her hand over Margo's heart. As long as you're breathing, as long as you're feeling the weight of the clay, you're never lost. They stood together in the quiet of the iron root, two women covered in the earth, surrounded by broken things made beautiful again. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the valley refreshed and sparkling under a bruised purple moon. The city was still there, miles away, with its lights and its lies, but it no longer held any power over them. In the morning, there would be emails to answer, contracts to sign, and a world to face. But tonight, there was only the scent of wet cedar, the warmth of joined hands, and the shimmering golden knowledge that being broken was just the first step toward becoming a masterpiece. Margo Vance, the architect of shadows, finally stepped into the light, and Lola, the keeper of the earth, was there to catch her. The story wasn't about the vases anymore. It was about the tracks they left in the clay, the indelible, messy, glorious marks of two souls finally finding their center.